Well, I don't know. I came into Dsk Shivajians in India I'm sure Subrata Paul and all those boys they had no qualms about having me as a coach in DSK. No, I don't think so. I think what's good is that when you show the quality of your work, and when you're in even coaching licenses, I was very lucky in our pro license. We had Robbie Keane, Damien Duff, Andy Reid, really superstars of the game that were on our pro license. And they had we would sit and have ideas and sit and talk, and they were always talking to me about coaching. I was always talking to them about coaching. And, we're doing very similar things. The fact that you're coaching women, that's what I say, I'm not a women's coach. I coach women. Big difference. I'm a football coach. And I think when you talk in those terms, it becomes, again, it helps the country that I'm in. In Iceland, we're very egalitarian, as I said. We're very equality based. So you're just a football coach who happens to coach women. That's kind of where I am on it. I have no problem jumping between men and women. I help out every club apart from this one here. I've been I was in the women's game. I was also heavily involved in the men's team. So it's, there's not that much difference, to be honest.
The VAR Show. The one place for your weekly football update.
Hola, very warm welcome to the VAR Show, the show which talks about all the various major football leagues in detail. Today we are going to continue the theme of interviews, and we have the head coach of Vikingur FC women's team, Mr. John Andrews, with us. So without wasting much time, I would like to first thank John for coming on the show. Thank you and welcome to the show. And I would like to begin by asking you, how are you and what are you doing these days?
I'm absolutely fine. As I told you earlier, as we spoke earlier, I just come back from the store buying a new laptop because I'm not computer literate, so I broke the last one. We're just getting back. We're playing on Monday now. Our women's team is playing on Monday, so we're just getting ready for that now. We've training tonight, tomorrow, and Sunday, and then it's back to normal, hopefully, in Iceland.
So how has the pandemic period been for you? Like, what have you done? Like, it might have been very boring for a coach, to be away from the field.
The funny thing, it's not really for me, Lala, is because the fact is that I was finishing off my UEFA Pro license, and when it hit, we had to have all our stuff in by April the 18th. So when this hit in March, it gave me all day, every day to concentrate and just get my pro license work done. And I also got finished off the UEFA Elite Youth A cert license. So I finished that as well. So it's been very busy for me. And I'm also, just like I was in DSK in India, I'm also the head of strength and conditioning here. So I had all the fitness programs to do for our senior teams and our academy teams. So I was quite busy. It was quite a great time for me, to be totally honest with you.
Definitely. And as you mentioned, you're currently in Iceland with the women's team. And how is Iceland in general? I heard it's very beautiful, but how is the football? How is it for you living there?
The football is a very high standard, if I'm going to be honest. It's we've got a friend of mine is over because he hasn't been able to get back to his own coaching job, and he came in to help me out for a couple of months. And he cannot believe how professional the standard is. He can't believe how much the players train, how hard they work, for such a small country. And I think when you look at Icelandic football, men and women, the amount of players that go out and are successful in leagues abroad, male and female, it just shows that the standard of the coaching is very, very, very high. So it's a pleasure to work here, and it's I've got a lot of funny stories about when I got here, about the different cultures, because I was in America for a long time, and it was an eye opener for me, and it's a country that I just fell in love with as soon as I got here.
I just have a myth in my mind. I don't know if it's a myth or not, but you can just correct me if I'm wrong. Like, is there some particular time in Iceland where you cannot train?
Not really. With the country it gets really cold. It's called Iceland. It's not called Sunland. It gets really cold here, and in the winter, if it goes below a certain degrees, we play in the indoor halls. I think there's 20 full-size indoor fields, fully heated, fully 4G fields. They're absolutely fantastic. So the kids get to train all year round. The adults get to train and play all year round. So there's football. I think it's different this year with the COVID pandemic, because the seasons are going into October now, and maybe even the start of November. But we usually take October off at a senior level, and then after that you train all the way through November, December, January, February, March, April, and the league starts in May. So it's a full-time job. It's a full-time. These players are getting just as good an football education as anywhere in the world.
So definitely, and you mentioned of course you have a lot of good facilities, and like you said, your friend who came there was shocked and appalled by the condition, like what is available. And is it the similar stuff for women's also, or is it only for men's? What it is?
Yeah, it's you see, most of the clubs have male and female teams, so that the female team will have exactly the same access to facilities, exactly the same access to the training times, training grounds, everything. It's a very egalitarian country. It's a very equality-based country. It's a smashing place to live. So the female athletes get exactly the same as what the men's get.
Definitely. And in terms of the game as a overall quality and everything, is there any gulf in class between the men's game and the women's game in compared to its own self?
Well, there's the obvious physical gulf. The gulf in between male and female athletes. That's the evidence. That's just biology, I would think. But the standard of coaching. No, I talk to people a lot about this, and they'll say, "Oh, you're a women's coach." And I'd say, "I'm not. I'm a football coach that coaches women." The game is the same. The rules are the same. Everything's the same. So it's physically, yeah, there's a little difference, but technique-wise and ability level, the female players are getting better and better all the time. And you had to look at the World Cup last year, and some of those games were absolutely magnificent games. And my own father is not, was never a big fan of women's football, but he sat down. It was 2015 with me, watched the World Cup final, and he was sick in 2019, and he was in hospital. He watched every game. He loved it. So it's the exact same rules. It's just maybe the physicality is a little different, but the skill levels and stuff like that, they're improving every day.
Definitely. Like you said, some of them say that you're a women's coach. So if suppose hypothetically, if you have to apply for a job somewhere else, so does that mean that those who are recruiting, they look down upon you because you come from a women's game?
Well, I don't know. I came into Dsk Shivajians in India I'm sure, Subrata Paul and all those boys they had no qualms about having me as a coach in Dsk. No, I don't think so. I think what's good is that when you show the quality of your work, and when you're in even coaching licenses, I was very lucky in our pro license. We had Robbie Keane, Damien Dove, Andy Reid, really superstars of the game that were on our pro license. And they had we would sit and have ideas and sit and talk, and they were always talking to me about coaching. I was always talking to them about coaching. And, we're doing very similar things. The fact that you're coaching women, that's what I say, I'm not a women's coach. I coach women. Big difference. I'm a football coach. And I think when you talk in those terms, it becomes, again, it helps the country that I'm in. In Iceland, we're very egalitarian, as I said. We're very equality based. So you're just a football coach who happens to coach women. That's kind of where I am on it. I have no problem jumping between men and women. I help out every club apart from this one here. I've been I was in the women's game. I was also heavily involved in the men's team. So it's, there's not that much difference, to be honest with you.
So towards the end of your playing career, you played in Iceland. So did that have an influence in your decision to coach in Iceland?
It did, yeah. I was. It was very funny because I came over as an assistant coach on the women and as a player. And after a year of the assistant coach with the women, my friend who brought me over here, he left, went to a different club, and I was still too young to stop playing, so I stayed. And I always kept my eye on the women's team. And something that really attracts me about the female athlete is how hard they work and how dedicated they are. It's unbelievable. And the male athletes are exactly this. I'm not saying there's any difference. I'm just saying when you look at the female athlete and what they have to go through, biologically and this kind of stuff, the effort they put into their sport is magnificent. And because of the fact, I think I started coaching the senior team here in 2010 in a club called Afturelding. Because I was so much in love with the country and so much in love with the lifestyle and the standard of football, and I could see myself progressing. As soon as they offered me a head coach's job, I jumped at it. And that's, it helped that I was playing here, and you're able to show people then that you know what you're talking about at a high level, rather than just coming in from abroad and saying, right, I'm Irish or I'm English or I'm from India. You know, you come over and you show them that you know your stuff. And the Icelandic people are very good at doing their homework as well. They look back at your CV and they look back at your playing career, and I know I had a half decent playing career. It wasn't great, but it was okay. And then that kind of gave a little bit of respect and a little bit of validity to my choice as being the head coach.
Definitely. And you also mentioned that you are also the SNC coach, strength and conditioning. So does it? How do I put it across? Does it make your work harder because you have to be a coach and an SNC coach?
It really does. My most enjoyable time as an SNC coach was in India, because India, we know in India we were the ACL capital of the world. Everybody had an ACL in it, and we cut that down to zero in DSK, just with strength training, good nutrition. And when you see the benefits with players, and you see them coming from always being injured, always being they were in great shape. The Indian lads looked fantastic, 6 packs and big muscles, but they were functionally very weak. So we would have all these players, and by the time we left, I was so proud of them. They were magnificent. And I do the same here. I look at my players here and I say, right, I have maybe I shouldn't tell you this, but I have a little trick when talking about S&C. When you're hiring the S&C coach, if his first answer isn't when you say, what are you going to bring? If he doesn't say, or she, if they don't say player safety, that's a red mark straight away. I think player safety has to be number one. It's no point being the fittest guy on the treatment table, So, it does make my job a lot harder, because as a head coach, I want to push them and push them and push them. And as an S&C coach, I'm sitting looking at the numbers and saying, well, they can't do this and they can't do that. So it's kind of conflicting, But we're getting the balance right. We don't have too many. I think in the last 4 clubs I've been at, I've had 3 muscle injuries, I think. So I think I'm getting there, and my players are usually kind of fit as well. So, but it's a very tough job.
I just wanted to ask you, I have 2 questions from that answer, and it's do you take up the role of SNC because you are not satisfied, because you are ownself a certified SNC coach, that you don't want to give it to someone else because you may not be satisfied with their work, or what is it?
That's a great question. That's the first time I've been asked that, and I don't think, if you don't mind, I'll have a couple of seconds to think about that. No, I think maybe there's an element of that. I'll tell you a little story. We'll go back to the S&C thing. I didn't hire an assistant coach here until the start of the season in June, because of the COVID regulations. We started late. I didn't hire an assistant because the right person wasn't available, and I wouldn't waste my club's money by just going, I'll just hire this person or I'll just hire that person. I made sure that I got the right person in, and it's the same in S&C. If I'm looking around and I'm saying to myself, right, well, Paul is here and he's okay, well, I can do a better job at that. So maybe I should do it, because I want the best for my club. I don't know how to say this. I wear the jersey very quickly when I come into your club. You can ask the guys at DSK and Jerry and Zola and Subrata. As soon as you walk in the door, the T-shirt is put on, the logo is on, and I want the best for that club until the day I leave. And so if I think I know I'm of a better standard, then I'll make sure I do it. Now, it might be an extra workload for me, and it might be long hours, but at least I know my job. The job is getting done, and the players are getting fitter and healthier. I wouldn't like to give that to somebody who's substandard, and I refuse to give it to people who are substandard. So I think that might answer your question, would it?
Yeah, I kind of get it. I thought this is quite similar, because it might not be the similar stuff, but how I'll just give an example like how Thierry Henry, apparently he was annoyed with the Monaco players because they were not scoring and he wanted his standard of
Yeah,
play, which was kind of
yeah.
unfair to them. But for him, that's how the minimum basic standard should be. So even
Well,
you coming from
I'm
the
sure,
SNC background, you'll have a minimum standard what the
well,
company.
I'm sure Thierry Henry's minimal standard is a lot higher than our minimal standard. I'm sure, I'm sure someone who's one of the greatest players of all time might have higher standards than somebody who's playing in the Sunday League or something. Yeah, but the good thing with S&C, it's different than the playing side of it. You've got numbers. You can track your players, and you can make sure you can see their results, and you can see their safety, and you can see their improvements or their declining in fitness levels. So you can start, when you can test them, and then you can start building them from that level. There's no point if I come in like I did with some players in India. Some players in India couldn't lift 5 kilogram weights in a bicep curl. So there was no point me setting up a session for them doing 100 push-ups and 20 kilogram bicep curls. We would get and build them every day. And by the time we finished off, there was people that were absolutely rubbish when we got them, that were much more than competent when we finished with them. They were an excellent group of players. And it's the same here. We test the players. As soon as I come in, I'll have a couple of weeks training with them to get to know them and see their personalities. And then I test them. I don't test them straight away. I think it's wrong to do that. I think you have to get to know them and make the players comfortable in your surroundings, then test them. And then after that, you just build them.
So like because it's a field which I have interest in, that is like SNCA, and I just wanted to ask, like, do you believe in like something like progressive overload or something?
Oh, of course. Yeah. There's no wrong answers in S&C. This is, the more you dig into it, the more you find out there's no wrong answers. You can find enough evidence in any theory you like. You can find enough evidence to prove that you're right. But it's just putting the work in to prove that you're right. And then go back to your player safety and see how many of my players are getting injured. You might have what you think is the best S&C strategy in India, and then suddenly all your players are getting injured. Well, then you have to look at yourself. You have to look and say, well, what am I doing wrong? Am I not giving them proper nutrition? Am I not giving them, is it a progressive overload? Is it an underload? Am I not pushing? There's also a thing called a zone of proximal development. Whereas if you're not pushing players hard enough, they're not going to get the best benefit, but you can't push them too hard or it becomes an unrealistic goal. So you have to find that balance. I like to find that balance in testing because then you have the numbers, and if the player comes and complains, you can say, well, here's your numbers. And you can't, science doesn't lie.
Definitely, and like I have a lot of questions. I don't know, it just pumped up. Like it's just related to SNC. For some reason, I have a lot of interest in that. You've been to India where the climate can be extremes, and again to Iceland where it can be again extremes in the different thing. And as a SNC coach, how long do you take to figure out what or how to get about stuff? Because you cannot have the same one size fits all method in both the countries because it's very vast and very different in terms of climate.
Well, the dehydration levels with the cold and the hot, the heat in India and the cold in Iceland, the dehydration levels is quite similar. How I would do it on a training field is we would weigh them on the way out and weigh them on the way back in, and then we would make them before they went for their shower and before they went for their food. They would have to replace, just with normal water, they would have to replace that amount of weight lost in water. So if you lost a kilogram of weight, I would make you drink a litre of water. I got that from my brother-in-law is a world champion race walker, Robert Heffernan, and he put me onto that. And it was uncomfortable for players at the start because some players would lose 2.5 kilos and they'd have to drink 2-3 litres of water before we would let them go. But what happened was they rehydrated their body and the injury levels just went boom, no injuries. So I thought, well, we're on to something here. And it's something simple like that, you have to look at your levels as well. Maybe we're not at the highest level like Man United or Barcelona, so we don't have to look at these tiny increments, these tiny little things. We might have to look at something that's huge like hydration, rest, nutrition, sleep, all this kind of stuff. So that's kind of, and then in Iceland, Facilities might be a little better in certain places, so you can push them a little harder. Nutrition is definitely a positive over here with the standard of nutrition, and so you can push them a little, maybe not harder, but you can do, as you said, differently. But there's no one size fits all. No, this one size fits all thing will get you into trouble in anything. I think in anything in your life.
Definitely. And you said like there were a lot of ACLs in India, and you said like ACL capital. So is it purely down to what the previous SNCs were doing, or is it even like maybe diet, like you mentioned, diet, or even the ground plays a factor?
You know what? Because I was only there for a year, I can't really say to be an expert on it. We were told the amount of players that had ACLs the previous 2 years or the previous 3 years by the previous manager. And all I did was I had a little look at what they were doing. I'm a big believer in patterns. So I looked backwards and I thought, well, this is their training schedule. Where's their nutrition? Well, we didn't have nutrition. I said, well, that's obviously a problem. So we fixed that up. Where's their sleep? Well, we didn't monitor their sleep. Well, we fixed that. And it was just simple things. Where was their hydration? Where was their fluids? What did they do in training? How did it, was their training science-based, or was it just a guy coming, you know what, we'll do a rondo and we'll do a five-a-side today? Or is it science-based? Are you looking at your field sizes? Are you looking at how long you're going to train for? Are you looking at the heat, dehydration levels? And most times, you've got to be honest with yourself, you said no. And we did. And it was just simple stuff like that. If we felt we used GPSs, I think, for about 8 to 10 weeks, and they helped. But we were able to see the patterns then in the players after 8 to 10 weeks. We were able to say, well, this player, the lazy players then, the players who put it in. So the GPS, we still used them, but we didn't need to look at the data as much because we kind of saw it on the training sessions. But it was just simple stuff like that, and it was just looking at players and having a science-based training program rather than just. There's some days that you just turn up and you can see the players are a little bit off, and you go, you know what, today's a rondo and a five-a-side, a little bit of shooting, and let's get off. That's fine. A little bit of variety is fantastic, but have a reason behind everything you do. Have a reason and say, well, today is they've played Saturday, they need to be worked. They need to, have a cardio session today. Let's make the field bigger. Let's play for a little bit longer and stuff like that. And it's as long as you have a reason behind your sessions, your players will suddenly realise that you know what you're talking about, and they'll respect that. And then also your injury levels they might not, but they should drop. And if the injury drops, as I said, I'll always go back to it. If you have an S&C coach, and if it's something that you're looking to do yourself, I would always say number one is player safety. Because if you have the best S&C program and all your players are on the treatment table, well, your manager is going to lose games. And that could be your fault.
Definitely. And staying on the current theme, and you said your league is starting on Monday. So because of the pandemic...
Sorry, lad, it's restarting.
Oh, it's restart. I'm so sorry. Restarting. I meant restart itself, like because of the break. And how did you have to change or accommodate your ideology in terms of SNC because of the pandemic break?
We had to just calculate the players, the amount of players would do in a certain training session. So it could be an aerobic session, it could be an anaerobic session, and we just calculated it up, and then we replaced it with that kind of running, because they can do the running on their own. They can go out on the field, or they can go close to their homes. They can do the running. So then we would tell them, right, here's a running program that will mirror what we would have done in the session on the Tuesday. So we tried to keep it going as a normal week. We know it was very hard. It was very difficult to you know yourself. You can't do it. Running doesn't really replace what the players are going to do in the game, but we tried. And then the weightlifting stuff stayed the same. The lifting and all that stayed exactly the same as if we were going to play on a Saturday. And then we did an overload session on the Saturday, or, I always say Saturday for the day of the game. Then we did a recovery day and a free day. And we just kind of kept it going like that. So the players should be at a decent level still. We didn't really change that much. We just kind of switched it from football training to athletic training and running training and stuff like that.
Definitely. And as being a coach and an SNC coach, you have more control over everything and every aspect about how you can take it through. But being only an SNC coach, you may be frustrated that the coach may want something, or there may be difference of ideology. So how do you tackle with that?
Well, you just answered your own question. I don't have to, because I'm the coach as well. Yeah, the S&C side of it, it's realistically the S&C coach has to do what the coach says. the players have to be able to perform the way the manager wants them to perform at the weekend. That's the be all and end all, is the Saturday and the result on the Saturday, especially in senior football now. It's different than underage. But you can always come to S&C coaches and assistant coaches, they do their best work on the sofa when they're having a cup of coffee with the coach, because you can say, we need to do this, and this. And the coach might say, no, we're doing this. Well, at least you've put forward your idea. At least you've done that. You have to give the coach the option. At the end of the day, then it's the coach's choice whether to take it up or not. And you might get a little bit frustrated, but it's it's his job on the line, or her job on the line at the end of the day. They're the coach, so they have to make those decisions. But you just have to give them the best options, and then it's up to them to make that decision.
Definitely. And I'll get back to football and not dip into SNC a lot, because most of them would be very bored. Although I find it very interesting, but others may not. So as a coach, how do you play? Like what is the trademark of your team? What is the philosophy that you play with?
It depends on the players you've got when you come into the club. We came into the club here, and we've got very fit players, very strong players. So we play a very high pressing game. Very high pressing. We get at people. We don't let them settle on the ball. And then we do an awful lot of transitional play and how to play quickly in and around the penalty box, because we win a lot of balls up high. I like that. I don't believe that it's criminal to allow a player to get their head up and pick a pass, unless that's your tactic. But if you're going to play a high pressing game, I think it's criminal to have players switching off. So at this club, it's high press because the players are fitter. There was times in DSK when myself and the manager would say, you know what, it's too hot. We were playing in the middle of the day. It could be 35 degrees. We can't high press. We've got to drop into a low block. That's all the joy of being a coach, because you can sit and say, well, again, I think there's a lot of coaches put themselves in a block. I'm a high pressing coach. Well, what happens if you can't high press? What happens if you go into a club that don't have that? You don't have that type of player. You have to adapt and be adaptable and be flexible, I think is a great word. So at the moment, in this club, high pressing, we get at people, we don't let them settle, we make sure their heads are down. But then if I go to a different club, or if the players change here or something changes, maybe I have to change that philosophy. You have to be flexible, I think.
Definitely. And again, I'm drifting into the SNC part. I don't know, it just goes on. It's because of the restart and the break, how long ideally does it take for your team to press at full throttle?
You know what? I can't answer that. I really can't, because we play on Monday. I would hope to tell you that we're going to be at full throttle on Monday, round about 7 o'clock. But then again, they might not be, So I don't really know. It's a lot of coaches now. I'm hearing a lot of coaches, and I'm sure you're doing a lot of homework yourself. And we're probably watching the same people, and they're all talking about what they're doing in the pandemic. It's causing chaos, because not a lot of us know what we're doing, to be honest with you. We're having to go. We usually plan almost like a 6-month block and say, this is where we want to be at the end of the block. Now we're planning week to week, which is not like, nobody really does that at a decent level of coaching. But we're having to do it because we don't know if we're going to be playing this week. We don't know if there's going to be another lockdown. And it's a waste of time planning a 6-month block if in 2 weeks' time it's all cut away. So, it's very hard to answer that question. But hopefully, as I said, hopefully we'll be ready at full throttle on Monday. That would be nice.
So, I always had this doubt, okay? And it's just general. It's since you are both a coach, you fill 2 positions yourself. And most managers say that they would prefer a full pre-season to themselves with the team. How important is the pre-season, for a team? Maybe even in terms of a manager to implement his idea.
Well, we're lucky here in Iceland. We have a 6-month pre-season. We finish in October, and then we come back in November. We have competitive games, competitive pre-season tournament games from January until April. So realistically, we have a pre-season of 6 to 7 months sometimes. Excuse me. So you can implement an awful lot of tactical and technical work in that time. So for me, it's just it's like an intermittent stages. You just get better day by day by day by day. And I like to set my goals. If I came into the club here in early November, and I asked them, what do you want to do? I said, I've signed a 2-year contract. What do you want to have happened at the end of this 2 years? And the players all, I won't reveal the goals, obviously, but the players all said this, and this. I said, okay, well, we wipe that and we start towards it here. And we just start building day by day. And sometimes it's frustrating because you know everybody wants to run before they can walk. But you have to realize you can't just go from here to here straight away. You have to build. You have to be patient. Look at Klopp at Liverpool. He came in his first press conference. He said, we'll win it in 4 years or 5 years. Look what they did. They're the best team in the world now because they trusted him and they gave him that time. And it's a fantastic example from Liverpool. I'm lucky, to have worked with the Liverpool International Academy out in India. It's a brilliant club to work for. And he's a prime example of building and building. I remember some pundits on TV talking about how terrible Liverpool were. They lost a cup game, I think, in his first year or second year. And they were saying Liverpool are rubbish and I wouldn't watch them out my back garden, which probably was true. But now look at them. They're probably the best team in the world now.
And I also have this another doubt is like you said you are doing a pro license, and generally pro license, you said you mentioned a lot of names who are generally involved in the men's game, and in at least overall or all around the world, the men's game in terms of tactics is I would like to, for lack of a better word, it's superior in comparison to women right now. So what you learn or what you get ideology from that, how do you apply it directly into women's game, or do you have to like adjust it according to the tactical knowledge?
Again, I'll go back to the fact that I'm a football coach, not a women's football coach. You learn the game, and then it has to be your skill as a coach to be able to put your plan into place with the players you've got. Like if for argument's sake, let's take Robbie Keane, who is one of the most knowledgeable people I've ever met in football. The guy just eats, sleeps, and drinks football. If Robbie was to try and implement the Tottenham Hotspur or the Liverpool or LA Galaxy or Aston Villa or Ireland, those philosophies into a non-league team in England, if he took that job, well, it wouldn't work because the players aren't up to that standard. So you have to adapt whatever you learn. And there's a good thing, the coaching pathway. I did my coaching education a little bit in Iceland, the UEFA B in Iceland, but the UEFA A, and I finished the UEFA Pro in Ireland. And the coaching pathway teaches you, if you do it properly, it teaches you how to deal with under 8s, under 10s, under 12s, academy players, first team players. And then you learn. And maybe if you come into a club who are not as good, you might go, well, they would be academy level. We have to adapt our sessions and bring them here. And that's both on the men and the female side. It's nothing to do with men and women. It's nothing to do with gender. It doesn't have anything to do with that. It's just the level of your player. So I came in here. We looked at the fitness levels and the strength levels and the skill levels were quite good. So we were able to really give these players sessions that maybe I would have learned at Coventry when I was a player, or and now you slightly adapt them, of course. But it's you're coaching the game. You're not coaching the level. You're not coaching. Oh well, these players are rubbish and these players are great. You're coaching football. So you have to be able to adapt to the players you've got.
Yeah, of course, definitely. What I actually wanted to ask was that, you managed in India, then with the men's team, and then you moved to suppose a women's team. How do you change your ideology? Because you are dealing with maybe like you said, like you are dealing with certain amount of people with certain amount of game knowledge at this level of stage, and you're moving with another set of persons who have different game knowledge. How do you adjust it? How do you adjust your ideology?
You try testing, especially on the S&C side and even on the fitness side on the field. It's to do with testing, and then you just have to judge the level of your player. You have to go back and like I watched every game that this team played last year, and they didn't have a very good season last year. I watched every game they had that I could get my hands on. And I saw the patterns. I said, well, they're not good at this, and they are very good at this, and how can we build next year? That's just doing your homework. That's just coaching. So that's kind of how I looked at it. If I was to go back into the men's game at a high level, of course, you would look at the team and you'd say, all right, great, what do they need, and how do we make them better? it's quite simple. It's not easy. Jesus, don't get me wrong, but the formula of coming into a new club, do your homework, know what the players, know you're usually coming into a job if something bad has happened. Maybe the previous manager has gotten fired or something like that. So you're usually coming into a job because of that. So find out what went wrong and fix it. That's the long term goal. So it doesn't really matter the standard of the player you're coming into. Just have a little look at what you're coming into and have done your homework and have prepared, and you'll be okay. You'll be fine.
Definitely, and I'll not take much of your time, and I'm coming to the end. And so, the next question will be maybe difficult for you because you would have a lot of high moments. But if you had to choose one moment which is the most proudest in your career, which one would that be?
As a player or as a coach?
You can give me both.
As a coach, it would have to be players coming through international teams, into senior national teams, whether it be male or female. We had, Zola at Dsk, we had Jerry at Dsk, both Jerry's the left back. I'm not even going to try and say their second names. It would be disrespectful to me. Subrata, of course, to work with great people like that. We've people here called Laura Christine, who's a terrific player who played for me as a young kid. So the development of players, of course, when you win leagues, I've won a couple of leagues as a manager, a couple of national championships in America. That was very proud. But it's when you see the people that your players have become, and you can meet them for a cup of coffee and a chat, and they're knowledgeable, and I still keep in contact very slightly with the lads in India, but I get lovely messages from them every now and then, and it's that's what kind of makes me proud. As a player, there was a lot of really, really good highs. I think I'll tell you a funny story, if you don't mind. I signed at Coventry in 94, was it? 95 or 94, I think. And Ron Atkinson was the manager, the old Manchester United and Aston Villa manager. And my parents came over. And my dad was there in his suit. My mother was in a big flowery dress, as you would wear in the 1990s, it was the style. And we were going out to training, and there was a bus to take us to training. And my mother went, "Oh, one second." And Ron Atkinson kind of stood in the way of her because she wanted to say goodbye to me before training. And he said, "Mrs. Andrews," I was standing there, and he said, "Mrs. Andrews, he's a professional footballer now. He's, leave it off." And put me on the bus. And my heart just went, I felt like one of the most famous managers in the game at the time has just called me a professional footballer. And I was at the start of my career. I just thought, oh my goodness gracious, how amazing is that? My mother started crying, of course. She started crying, but no, but that was a very. It's hard. I still think my best days my most proudest days are to come. I'm very ambitious. I'm very. I want to do great things as a coach, and I'm slowly building myself up the coaching pathway and the coaching ladder, and I'm enjoying every minute of it. So I think my best days as a coach are far in the future. Because I do believe I'm getting better and better. So hopefully I'll be a fairly competent coach by the time I retire.
So yeah, definitely. And I wanted to ask you, this is my second last question. I'll not hold you up much more. And it's like, since you're managing a women's team and which unfortunately does not get the limelight which men's game gets, okay, at least all over the world. So does it as a coach help you grow because you're not under the spotlight and you can make mistakes, which if you are in a men's game, you would not, you will be continuously under scrutiny?
These are brilliant questions. These are brilliant questions. It's something I never thought of. I don't know. When you're in Iceland, the female game gets a fair bit of attention. You go to places like Sweden and the Scandinavian countries. It's a very egalitarian system. It's very level and equal. So you do get a little bit of spotlight, which is lovely. I don't know. Do you know what? I don't know. It's a great question because of the fact that I've always gone into jobs and done my best. And I've always asked, before I went into jobs, I've always asked, what's the end goal? What do you want at the end of my time here? And we've built, and people can see I'm building towards that. So that I never seem to have any pressure because we've set out our goals and we're always working towards them. So I don't feel that kind of pressure at all. I think that's the way anybody should go into a job. And I think people in the administration side of football should respect that. With even the coaches in the Premier League in England, you're seeing someone who are getting fired after 2 or 3 months or 4 months, and you're saying you can't even put your stamp on a club in that amount of time. So I can't answer that question because I've never felt that pressure. Whether it be the men's, even at Dsk, like we had a brilliant owner at the time. We had a brilliant set of players and probably the best facility in India, I would think, in Pune, I think. But we never felt any pressure. We knew we were developing the players. We knew we were building towards something really, really big. So if you're looking at it day to day, if you're looking at the long-term goal and you're saying, oh my God, we want to win the Asian Cup, and well, that's going to frighten anybody. But if you're saying, well, we're here today, we just want to be here tomorrow, well, everybody can achieve that. So no, I don't feel that kind of pressure at all because I think I'm more realistic as regards my goals. My goal is for tomorrow, building towards my long-term.
Definitely, and you've had a lot of experience under your belt, in both the genders game. And if you had to give a piece of advice to a young coach who's coming up, what advice would you give that coach?
I just did it. I just had a meeting with the academy coaches. That's why I was a little late coming on here. And one of them said, I was reading about, and I said, read more. And he said, but I said, read more. Do your homework. The sessions that you do aren't that different from what Klopp is doing or what Guardiola is doing or what, anybody. They're not that different. It's passing, it's moving, it's controlling the ball. They're all similar. Do your homework. Know the opposition. Know your own team. Have a little bit of time for yourself as well to enjoy outside of football. Don't just be this robot that's inside in the game because you'll end up burning out very quickly, especially as a young coach. But if I was to give anybody any advice, it would be enjoy the journey, because there's a very, very low percentage of the world's population that's employed in full-time football. And whether you're at a second division Icelandic women's team, you're at Man United, you're at the Indian national team, you're at the under fives in Bangladesh, if you're involved in football and getting paid for it, man, you need to wake up every morning and be grateful and think, what a great job I have. Because there's a lot of people that would kill to be in our position. So if I was going to give you advice, enjoy it, be grateful, and read. Read more.
So I just had a doubt. When you say read more, what do you read?
Anything you can find. Coaching manuals, interviews with coaches. If you're thinking that maybe you're not good with the press, or if maybe you're not good with in interviews, study on how people are better at interviews. Study at, it's all over YouTube. But every bit of information that you need is out there. If you get your bum off the seat and go and try and find it. It's not hard to find information on how to better yourself. And that's what I mean. Read more. If you can't understand why your players are doing a certain thing, go and read something, or go and call a coach that you admire and say, look, I'm having trouble. And just be humble and read and study and take in all that information. And it really does help. And it makes your job a lot. It doesn't make it easy, but it makes it a lot easier.
Definitely. And on that note, John, thank you so much for talking to me and giving me a precious time when your league is restarting on Monday. And I wish you all the best for that. Hope you can win the league and win all possible trophies. And hope we can talk again soon. Thank you once again for coming. Take care. Stay safe. Bye.
Anytime at all. Thank you very much. So we'll see you guys soon, and have a great weekend.
Same to you.
See you soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.